Hi, I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here with my December end of month wrap up and the last wrap up for 2024. Alright, I am here to wrap up the last half of December. It always feels strange to me wrapping up December when we're already now going into 2025. I'm already like done with the previous year. And so I don't know, I was contemplating even doing this wrap up and just skipping it. But then also I read some really amazing books that I want to talk about. So I want to give them their time that they deserve. So I'm going to do this video anyways. And I feel like wrap ups in general, like you could watch them whenever and pick up like new book recs. So we're just going to go with it. But I'm one of those people who it always just feels weird. Like I'm ready for a new year, a new fresh, a new start. I'm somebody who even on Christmas, like I love Christmas time. I love Christmas decorations, but as soon as like Christmas is over, like December 25th, that night, I'm ready to like put up Christmas decorations. Like I'm ready to move on to the next, but that's just me. But anyways, let's get into my December end of month wrap up. So I always do my wrap up videos in two parts. So I already had my December mid-month wrap up that I posted earlier in December. And so today we are doing my end of month wrap up. So I have 17 books to talk about in today's video. I read 38 books for the month of December and I'm ready to just get into these. I had an amazing December reading month. I had so many 4.5 and 5-star reads. And so I definitely want to talk about a lot of these. Some of them were kind of misses, but like majority was good. So let's get into it. Of course, as always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of these books, I do review every book that I read on Goodreads. You can get to my Goodreads, which is always linked in the description of all of my videos, where you can see all of my book reviews. Also in the description of all of my videos, I will link all of the books, the authors that I talk about. So if you miss any, you want to go back and see what I was talking about, they're all linked below as well. All right, so first up is Stealing for Keeps by Rebecca Jinchak. This is her newest release. It just came out on December 31st. I love this one to pieces. Rebecca Jinchak is a sports romance author who really hit for me. I've been reading her books for, I don't know, 3 years now at this point, and her books this year were all 5 stars for me. I think she had 4 releases this year, including this one. They were all 5 stars for me. I love them so much. This is technically classified as like a YA romance. It's like her YA debut, but like, I don't know, it's just like a high school romance where you're getting all of those first feelings, those first crushes, those first love, kind of all of those vibes in a book. And so like this book and the next book I'm going to talk about, they're both set in high school, but I feel like the other one isn't classified as YA, where this one is. I don't know, it's a thing, but it's just a really good story. So this one in particular, we are following the 2 characters. The heroine in here is a figure skater, and she had an injury that is now having her second guess kind of her career decisions, the things that she's worked for her entire life. Now she's kind of second guessing that. Like, does she want to continue to do that? Does she want to find something new, like a new hobby, new interest she's into? At the same time, the hero, he is a new soccer star to their school. His family moved basically for him to come to this amazing high school where there's a great team and a coach for him to play under. And so he comes there, and on the first day he meets the heroine, which their meet cute moment involves glitter and is so stinking cute. I loved it. This one gave me like all the giddy happy feels. And so in here they meet, and then you see how they're kind of crushing on one another, and him especially towards her. And they end up at a party later that night and they share a kiss because they're dared to kiss. And after that is when he realizes that she is his new team captain's ex-girlfriend. And so some feelings and thoughts there for sure. I love this one. It's just that perfect like quintessential time when you were like a teenager and figuring out what you want to do with life and which friends you want to have in your life and what career paths you want to take and your interests and that first love and just like all of those giddy happy like hopeful feelings for the future. I love this one. So good. Highly recommend. I love Rebecca Jinchak's books in general. I don't know, I always just feel strange like classifying things as YA, but I mean technically I guess it is because they're high school age, but I don't know, I loved it to pieces. Highly recommend checking it out. Stealing for Keeps. It's the first book in a new series from her, and it is so stinking good. I loved it so much. 5 stars. I don't think I said that. 5 stars. All right, this next book is kind of that conversation I was having with like YA, because this one is also set in high school, but like I feel like people don't say it's YA. They just say it's contemporary romance. So I don't know. That's a whole side conversation. Anyways, this is Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. This is the first book in her Boys of Toman series. I had this book on my TBR for literally years and was just kind of scared, worried, wondering if it'd live up to the hype, so I didn't get to it for years. It's a thing. I had special editions of it and everything. This is one from Eternal Embers that they did, I think, last year, earlier in the spring. I grabbed it because I knew I would finally get to the series, and I did, so I did give it 5 stars. This book takes place in Ireland, and we have a rugby player, and then the girl who is new to his school has been recently transferred because of reasons and why she had to move her previous schools, and the heroine in particular has a horrible backstory, family life kind of situation going on. Lots of trauma and tragedy there, and you get to see a lot of that on page, so definitely some heavier content warning for this book, this series in general, I possibly want to say. I really enjoyed this one. I feel like at times times I had some mixed thoughts on if it was too long, but then I also knew that we needed that time with the characters and with their backstory to appreciate them as they are in the book. So like, I don't know, mixed feelings on the length of the book, but overall I really love this one. The audiobook was fantastic. I know the audiobook is on Hoopla. It's also on Audible with like, if you're an Audible member, you get it like to just grab through the Audible Plus thing, I want to say. So yeah, highly recommend this one. I'm so glad I finally got to it. Johnny and Shannon Like the River, I love them to pieces. I can't like not say her name without saying Shannon Like the River, because that is how she tells him her name at one point in the story. Love them so much. Really love the connection and how much he wants to take care of her, and just, it's just so good. 5 stars. All right, next up, I went on a binge of some Sabrina Jeffries historical romances, because for our Historical Hellions book club for December, we were reading the 3rd book in the series. And so she's an author I had wanted to get to for a while, so I decided to read the first 2 books in the series before getting to book 3 and kind of go on a binge. I was expecting to fully love this series, and sadly I did not. I have since heard that maybe some other books, other series are better from her, so maybe I'll give her a try again, but this one was kind of mid for me. Anyways, this is book 1. This is A Dangerous Love. I do think the covers, the gold, the step backs are stunning with this series. Sadly, I didn't love this one. This is her Swanley Spinsters series, which all the audios are available on Hoopla and Libby, so I do love that fact, and I might need to check out more from her. But anyways, this one, the whole series kind of deals with secret identity a lot, and so in this book, the heroine is one of the Swanley Spinsters, and her father is kind of sick, so he wants to find an heir slash finds an heir to their family, where basically the hero, where he was kind of raised as always thinking he was like a bibelo, a bastard, and he's done some searching and hired somebody to look into it, and he found out that he's like the so forth down the line cousin of this family, and so he is the next heir to the estate and to their earldom. And so he actually doesn't really care about gaining the earldom and all of that. He really just wants to get the proof that the current earl supposedly has of the hero's kind of birth or parentage, and so he wants to go there and get access to those papers. But the earl was like, all right, this is the perfect chance for me to marry off one of my daughters. You come here, I will give you that paper if you come and woo one of my daughters. And so he decides with his kind of man of affairs, which is kind of like his best friend, and they've kind of basically grown up together, where he decides to have his friend pose as him to go and woo one of the women, and then for him to pose as the man of affairs, and so he can kind of like sneak around the house and find his parentage papers. And so that is the plan. So when he gets there, he meets one of the earl's daughters, and that becomes their romance. And so of course he's keeping his identity a secret the whole time, and things go from there. I wasn't really a fan of the couple in here. They're very toxic. A lot of like back and forthness that I was just like, ugh, get over it already. So I don't know, 2 stars for this one, actually, sadly, for me. But I was invested enough to continue on in the series. Like I had heard, I think book 2 and book 3 were the best, so I decided to continue on. So the next one is A Notorious Love. I actually can't find my physical copy of this one, but it's fine. I will share it here as well. So this is the one that I actually liked the most in the trilogy that I read. So this one I gave 3.5/4 stars. This one is very much a road trip romance. So basically, like I said, how the hero and his friend kind of swapped spots in the first book, and then one of them had his story in that one. This is the other guy's story. So one of the Swanley sisters reaches out to this man because she met him, you know, in book 1. And so she's like, hey, our youngest sister has been kidnapped. She's been abducted. I want to go and find her, and I need your help. And so they end up on this road trip together to go in and find and save her sister, which in this one as well, you get POV of her sister who thinks she is going to elope, but then she finds out over time that the man's actually abducting her. So that kind of leads into book 3, but that's a whole different thing. But anyways, so this one was just kind of like that road trip adventure where they are trying to find her sister and track her down before it's too late. They have to pretend and be a married couple on the road at these different inns they stay at. I really enjoyed this one. I feel like this book in particular, I could see a lot of influences that this book probably had on future/current day historical romance authors, because I feel like I've read this kind of similar setup and trope, and like a lot of little moments kind of reminded me of other authors or seeing how they were influenced. And so yeah, I like this one, my favorite in the series. Towards the end, it kind of got a little heavy-winded there, but I liked it overall. So 3.5/4 stars. All right, and then the third one in the series, this was our Historical Hellions book club pick for the month and why I went on this whole binge of the series. So this is After the Abduction. Love the cover and the step back moment. It's so iconic. Just such a really cute wintry scene. So this one I gave 3 stars to. I feel like it was okay. Not my least favorite in the series, but not my favorite either. Just very mid. So this one, it takes place following things that happen in book 2. So this is the sister's story who was abducted in the second book, but she thought she was on an elopement. And so this is now 2 years later, where basically her reputation is in ruins. And so she goes to track down the guy who abducted her in book 2 and is like, hey, you're the one who can set the record straight and tell them how you were abducting me, kidnapping me to lead me to these smugglers and this kind of whole crime ring going on. And so you can kind of set the record straight on my reputation not being ruined. And so she sets out to find him. And when she gets there, along with her sister and brother-in-law from book 1, they go with her and they track down the man. And when they get there, he's like, yeah, that actually wasn't me. That was my twin brother who has now mysteriously died in a shipwreck. And so that becomes kind of the whole hidden identity, secret identity plot of the whole book, where basically the hero is, of course, the one who did abduct her. He does have a twin brother. It just doesn't happen to be the one who kidnapped the heroine. It was him. And so I did like and hear how immediately the heroine saw through his nonsense and was like, yeah, I ain't buying any of this. She's super suspicious and determined to get him to admit that he was the one that they shared a kiss and that he was the one who abducted her, and they kind of have these feelings. So that's basically the whole plot of the story. I loved the first half of it and felt like it was really strong, a really great premise, but then it just kind of started to lag for me. And so I kind of lost interest. So yeah, 3 stars for me. It was okay. Not the worst, but not the best. All right, and then next I had an arc of Wyatt by Jessica Peterson. So this is the second book in her Lucky River Ranch series, I want to say. This one I ended up giving 3.5 stars to, a very solid 3.5 for me. I loved Cash from her earlier this summer, so I had high hopes for this one. I still love the writing and the series overall. This one was just kind of a bit of a miss for me. So this one is out now. It came out in December. Like I said, I had an arc of it, so I read it early. This one is a cowboy western ranch setting in Texas, and in here we get friends to lovers. It was a little bit too low angst for me, and I didn't really connect with the characters as much as I did the first book. So in here, basically the hero is working at a ranch and the heroine is an equine surgeon, and so she takes care of horses. And so they grew up together, they were best friends, which she went on to go get all of her degrees. And so she's basically supposed to be only in their small town for a little bit of time before she goes on to a new job. And so when she's there, she decides to ask her best friend, the hero, hey, would you help me out with these like kind of lessons to have a good time while I'm in town? So it starts off with kind of a like friends with benefits situation. The whole time, like, he's assuming she's leaving. He's not okay with that. He wants her to stay. He's been pining for her for years. So it kind of goes from there, very low angst and just kind of chill, I guess. I don't know. There was like a little bit of stakes, but like it didn't feel like stakes. So it was okay. 3.5 stars for me. All right, next up is a historical romance. So this is No Ordinary Duchess by Elizabeth Hoyt. This is book 3 in her Grey Court series, which was a long-awaited, long-anticipated book. It had release dates for multiple years in the past and just kept getting pushed back. Finally came out in December. I had an arc of it and I didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars. I have read all of this author's historical romances, and her books, I have some amazing favorites that I love. So I always go back to her writing, but some, like this one in particular, and the first book in the series actually, I really just don't like or connect to. And so this was definitely the case for this one. I had kind of mixed hopes because I loved book 2 in the series, but book 1 was not my favorite, and this one kind of emulates more of what book 1 was giving, so it was not it for me. This one, I will say, it kind of follows up to things that were happening in book 1 with kind of these wise women and kind of this like magical element, like not magic, but like they're kind of into this like earthly magic, I guess you could say, of these wise women. And so it kind of goes from there. You're seeing the families that we met in book 1 in this book again. And so in here, you're following a nephew of a duke and then the heroine. And so they know one another, are in the same kind of circle / their families are kind of connected. And so you see their story go from there. This one, I just wasn't interested in the characters. I wasn't interested in the plot. I didn't care about their families. I just wasn't into it. There were some moments in here which I feel like could have been good, could have worked more, where the heroine is more of the take charge in their physical relationship, because the hero is one who likes to kind of turn over the reins, so to speak, during like physical times. And so I feel like it had promise, but also very disappointing. So I don't know, like 2 stars. I've definitely read way better from this author, and this one was just a miss for me. All right, next up I read The Striker by Anna Huang, and this one is the first in a new kind of sports romance series from her. The heroine here is a premier footballer or soccer player over in Europe, and so the heroine is a former prima ballerina who is also his teammate / rival's sister. So anyways, this one I actually ended up giving 3 stars to. I thought it was just okay. I feel like the length of it was definitely not needed. I feel like the pacing and the plot of it all was kind of all over the place. And so this one, I had high hopes for it because of the tropes and because of the setup. I really enjoyed the first bit of it, but then it just kind of was lackluster and felt too long. So yeah, I have read majority of Anna Huang's backlist, and this one was just kind of a miss for me. And here, basically, the hero and his rival, who is now a teammate, they have to kind of work together, and they kind of get into these arguments and fights a lot. And so something like that happens where their coach basically tells them in the off season, you guys are going to have to train together, and you're going to have to train at this ballet academy. And and that's where the heroine works, who is the hero's rival's sister. And so she is the one who has to train them. And like I said, she's a former ballerina, and now she works at this ballet academy. That's how they kind of meet. The hero is into her immediately, and then over time he realizes who she is, like that she is the sister of his rival. And it goes from there. I have personally just read better sports romances where there's like that whole teammate, rivals, sister situation. So it just wasn't a favorite for me. And like I said, I felt like the pacing was just kind of all over the place. So 3 stars for me. All right, next up, I read a Ruby Dixon novella. So this is When She's Handy. This is part of her Risdiverse series. Love this one so much, I gave it 4 stars. The Risdiverse series is one of my favorites from Ruby Dixon. They are so much fun, especially on audio. And this is a novella that recently got its audiobook. So I binged it because I've been binging the series that way. This one was a lot of fun. So basically in here, the heroine, she is living on this Risda 3, this farming planet, but she is not good at farming. She's not into farming. She just wants to be a mechanic and have her own kind of repair shop. And so at the beginning of the story, we see her kind of digging through this scrap pile, trying to find like some metals and things that she can use. And so the hero and his team end up showing up and seeing her and finding her. And that's when we realize they have a history as well. So basically 5 years prior, he ended up saving her. She was like a human slave on one of the planets. And so he and her actually shared a moment 5 years ago. And then now it is years later. And so she immediately is so glad to see him. And she's very bubbly, where he is the one who's kind of a little bit more standoffish because he thinks she only has this like hero complex about him. Because he's like, what do you actually know about me? What do you like about me? Like, do you just feel indebted to me? Because if so, I don't want that. But if you want to get to know one another, we can definitely do that. So I loved that. Loved seeing them become friends. And of course they become more. It's a novella. It's so cute and fun and short. It is on Libby and like Hoopla, kind of all the library resources. I love Ruby Dixon's audios. Highly recommend a sci-fi novella. Like, love it so much. All right, next I read Snowden by S.J. Tilley. So this is a new kind of holiday novella from this author. This one I gave 3.5 stars to. I thought it was okay. Basically, this is a follow-up to Second Bite. So this is part of a like trilogy of novellas that she did that are all following the same couple. So this is just like another addition to their story. I really loved The Second Bite last year, which is the first book in the series. And this is, like I said, the second novella in it. So this one I thought was okay, which this has age gap. It's kind of like a Great British Bake Off themed, where the hero is like the silver fox judge. The heroine is a plus size baker on the show and a contestant. And so they kind of hit it off in the first story. And now this is the second story with them. And you kind of see them going on this adventure together. He invites her to go to Canada, where he has to film a kind of holiday special. And they end up getting in a snowstorm and they have to stay at this kind of cutesy, perfect Christmassy cabin together. So it's snowed in. It was just cute and fun. Like, it was fine. 3.5 stars. Next, I had an ALC of All the Missing Pieces by Catherine Cowles. This book is absolutely gorgeous and stunning. Can you even with this edition? It's so pretty. The ombre sprayed edges is everything as well. So gorgeous. I can't get over how beautiful this edition is. So this is the first book, possibly first book in a new series from Catherine Cowles. It comes out on January 7th, so it's going to be out soon. Highly recommend checking this one out. 5 stars. I love Catherine Cowles books so much. This is small town romantic suspense. This one has more suspense elements, I would say, than some of her other ones. So in here, the heroine is a true crime podcaster, where she's basically trying to get closure or find out more of a story for some families for like cold cases that aren't solved. And so she ends up in Shady Cove, which is the name of the series. And so she ends up in this town where basically she is trying to follow up to this case that she actually has personal connections to. She's trying to track down this case that she has connected all these like serial murders to. And so basically in here, one of the first victims supposedly lives in this town. And so she wants to get that heroine story because she actually survived. And so she goes there and she ends up meeting the grumpy sheriff, who of course is the hero. And you see how he is very anti newcomers to their town. He doesn't want people coming to their town and kind of stirring up that trauma and tragedy that they had and just kind of using it for their own gain. And so he's a little bit grumpy towards her in the beginning, but of course over time he sees that she actually is taking the time and consideration and care to the story, and she has a personal connection to it as well. And so it kind of goes from there, and he ends up starting to help her on the case as well. Really love this one. If you love, like I said, a kind of true crime podcasts and all of that, that's definitely featured in this book. Really love it. Comes out January 7th. The audio is amazing. Highly recommend. 5 stars. Next, I had an ALC of Forbidden Dreams by Natasha Madison. This one comes out, I want to say soon as well, in the beginning of January. This one I gave 4 stars to. I feel like the first book in the series I loved. This one was just okay for me. It wasn't my favorite, but like it's also a really good series. If you love like emotional and kind of more angsty books, this series has definitely hit from this author for me. It's my favorite series from her so far. So this one is the second book in the series, and in this one we get a single mom heroine, and she has recently gone through a divorce from an abusive, toxic ex. And so basically in here she ends up moving in next door to the hero, who hates her ex and his whole family family. And so he kind of has some feelings towards the heroine at first, and then over time realizes that she's nothing like her ex, and so they hit it off. It has that forced proximity because they live next door to one another. He has to step in a few times when her ex kind of comes over and starts drama. He also ends up hiring the heroine, and she starts to work at the bar where his family owns and he works at as well. Very much a one where the hero feels very protective towards the heroine and her son, which I thought was really cute. So yeah, it was cutesy and fun, small town, kind of like forced proximity. I enjoyed it, just not as much as I liked the first book. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. All right, and then I read The Starlight Heir by Amelie Howard. So this one comes out at the beginning of January as well. I had an ALC of this one, and this one I have some mixed feelings for. So I gave it 3 stars. I can't say I had high hopes for it, but I really love her historical romances. So I kind of went in to see what it was about. And so it's a new fantasy romance, which I did like in here, how the author uses a lot of her own voices / like her own kind of cultural history and things like that. So we get a lot of Indian and Middle Eastern mythology, we get astrology, we get palmistry, kind of all of these things interwoven into the fantasy elements of the story. This one I was just along for the ride. Like I said, I had the audio ALC, so I feel like I liked it a little bit more than maybe I would have if I read it. So that's kind of a thing. So I don't know, it was entertaining enough, but also like it wasn't the most amazing thing I've read either, so it was fine. Like it was just fine. Spent a night reading it. It was fine. That's about it. 3 stars. So then I jumped into North is the Night by Emily Rath, which first of all, this edition is so stinking stunning. I love it so much, and I'm so glad I got a physical copy. Like, look at the underneath. The art in here, gorgeous. It has like a reversible dust jacket and more on the back. Ugh, it's so pretty. This one I really loved. I gave it 4.5 stars, and it was one of my favorites of the month. Highly recommend checking this one out. So this one I will say, don't go in expecting a lot of romance. It's fantasy. It's basically a Finnish folklore kind of inspired fantasy world and book, which I love the elements of the story and the characters, and was just kind of along for the ride with these gods of death and just kind of all of these things happening and these fantastical elements and these animals and these kind of spirits and things. I really enjoyed it, but I will say it kind of was giving historical fiction fantasy, I guess you could say. I loved it. I went in expecting just fantasy because I know the author came out and said, like, don't expect fantasy romance. It's not that. She was saying kind of has sapphic romance. I feel like even that wasn't really the case, and it's kind of maybe low on the scale for that situation, so I wouldn't go in even expecting sapphic romance from it either. So I don't know. I wouldn't go in expecting sapphic or fantasy romance from this. If you're going in expecting fantasy and folklore and that mythology of it all, it is really good. So yeah, 4.5 stars. I really loved it. Such a good one. I listened to the audio, and I feel like audios actually for fantasies are really working for me. They used to not, but I feel like this month they really hit for me. So yeah, 4.5 stars. It's so good. It came out in December, and I highly recommend. All right, and then next I read The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. This one I really loved. I gave it 4.5 stars. Highly recommend this one. It was so good. I had read only Spells for Forgetting by this author before, which is another magical realism. I liked that one, but this one was even better. So this one does deal with June, the heroine, and she is of these pharaoh women, and basically all these women in her family have something going on with them, which you see as the story unfolds. And so I will say the story starts off really slow, which I had heard about before, saw reviews for that it starts off slow, and then once it kicks in, which you'll know when it does, it really hits, and I couldn't put it down. Highly recommend this one. It's so much fun. This is a kind of time travel, magical realism element to it. I will say it reminded me of a lot of stories I've read in the past. Stories, books, movies, TV shows, so things I have already seen or kind of already in my head as ideas of what was happening, and that's kind of the case for a lot of the plot points in here. So I will say I wasn't like super shocked or surprised by anything. It all made sense because I'm kind of used to that type of framing of stories. So I enjoyed it though, and it didn't take away from the story at all. So kind of the shows, books that I have read in the past that this kind of reminded me of is definitely Time Traveler's Wife, Outlander, we have What the Wind Knows, The Surviving Trace, kind of all of those elements into one is kind of what the feeling was for this book. But like I said, that didn't take away from it for me. I like books that remind me of other stories I've read, so I enjoyed it. 4.5 stars. Highly recommend. The audiobook was so good. I really enjoy this author's magical realisms, so I'm so glad I got to this second one from her. All right, and then I got an audio ALC of Visions of Darkness by A.L. Jackson. So this is her first foray into fantasy romance, and I thought it was just okay. I gave it 3 stars. This author's kind of been hit or miss from me in the past anyways with her contemporary romances, so I kind of just went in to see what it was about. Like I said, I had an audio ALC ALC, I decided to give it a go and I gave it 3 stars. So this one was interesting because we kind of get like a real world urban fantasy type setting, or urban setting, like it's just the real world with no fantastical elements. And then you get this kind of like dream world, so to speak, like in the characters' dreams, they go to this fantasy world. And so I thought that part was interesting. I just wasn't a fan of like the execution of it all or the characters or plot overall. I feel like it was a bit slow and I wanted more. So in here, the heroine, she has always gone to this kind of dream world and talks about this character or this person that she knows and all of these people and this whole plot. And so her family kind of thought she was crazy. So they end up sending her to a mental institution, and then the story kind of goes from there. And so eventually she does meet the person from her dreams, her like kind of, they thought of it as like an imaginary friend over the years, but the person is real, and that is the hero, who is kind of her protector of sorts. And so I thought it was interesting in here how we get different POVs as well, like not just character POVs. You get first person POV when you're in the kind of real world, and then when you're in the dream world, you're getting third person POV. Thought that was interesting. I mean, it was a way to kind of tell the difference of which portion of the story you were in, but also I'm not sure if I like that execution where stories jump different first person, third person like that in its own story. Not really a fan of that. So yeah, it was okay. I feel like the plot and the characters I just wasn't interested in. So I don't know. I probably won't continue on. It's going to be out in January. 3 stars for me. All right. And then I ended the year with another audio ALC. So I had Reckless Love by Willow Astor. I gave this one 3 stars. Didn't love it. I have enjoyed this series overall. This is part of her Single Dad's Playbook series. I loved book 1. And then the other books have just been fine for me. And this one is probably my least favorite so far. This is a friends to lovers setup where the hero and the heroine meet in college and they decide to make this friendship pact the first night they meet. And then over time we see their kind of relationship over the years, as well as them in current day where he is a single dad to a son. And it kind of goes from there where he is a football player. She is the cheerleader for the pro football team. And so there's kind of like this forbidden element to the relationship, but they're also becoming more than just friends. And so it kind of goes from there. I thought it was okay. I wasn't really a fan of the kind of dual timeline slash the flashbacks and kind of their whole relationship. I wasn't a fan really of them. And in here, sometimes I would forget the hero even had a son. So I feel like I wanted more of like the whole single dad aspect to it. So yeah, it was fine for me. 3 stars. Ended the year with a 3-star book. And actually when I looked back, I started the year with a 3-star book. So I'm hoping that in the new year, I start with a better book to kind of set off the year right. We shall see. All right. So those are all the books that I read for the last half of December and for the end of 2024. Definitely let me know in the comments if you read any of these, if you had a favorite book for December. I would love to know. I had a lot of really great 5-star reads this month. And so many that I really loved. So I do love that. Just ended the year with a 3-star read, which is fine. For the whole year, I ended up reading 426 books, which you can see my favorites books of the year. I have a video out for that already as well. I'll link it below if you missed it. So excited for what's to come in 2025. If you want to leave me an emoji in the comments today to let me know that you watched this video, leave me a wolf emoji. Since we have these wolves on this North is the Night cover. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I will see you in my next one and in 2025. Bye!